This is tape 1 of 3 tapes on the New Order of Barbarians, referred to on these tapes as simply the New World System. Tapes 1 and 2 are reminiscence by Dr. Lawrence Dunnigan of a speech given on March 20th, 1969 by an insider of the Order, whose names and credentials are given in the interview with Dr. Dunnigan on tape 3.
There has been much written and much said by some people who have looked at all the changes that have occurred in American society in the past 20 years or so, and who have looked then retrospectively to earlier history of the United States and indeed of the world, and come to the conclusion that there is a conspiracy of sorts which influences, indeed controls, major historical events not only in the United States but around the world. I want to now describe what I heard from the speaker in 1969. The speaker did not speak in terms of retrospect, but rather predicting changes that would be brought about in the future. The speaker was not looking from the outside in, thinking that he saw conspiracy. Rather, he was on the inside, admitting that indeed there was an organized power, force, group of men who wielded enough influence to determine major events involving countries around the world. I believe you'll be impressed with the degree to which the things that were planned to be brought about have already been accomplished. The speaker said that his purpose was to tell us about changes which would be brought about in the next 30 years or so that an entirely new worldwide system would be in operation before the turn of the century. He went on to say that the people who really influence decisions are names that, for the most part, would be familiar to most of us, but he would not use individuals' names or names of any specific organizations. But that if he did, most of the people would be names that were recognized by most of his audience. He was very active with population control groups, the population control movement, and population control was really the entry point. People won't be allowed to have babies just because they want to or because they are careless. Most families would be limited to 2. Some people would be allowed only 1. Indicated already much research was underway about making babies in the laboratory. Divorce would be made easier and more prevalent. Most people who marry will marry more than once. More people will not marry. Unmarried people would stay in hotels and even live together. That would be very common. And nobody would even ask questions about it. It would be widely accepted as no different from married people being together. More women will work outside the home. More men will be transferred to other cities in their jobs. More men would travel and work. Therefore, it would be harder for families to stay together. This would tend to make the married relationship less stable and therefore tend to make people less willing to have babies. Very important with sports was sports for girls. Athletics would be pushed for girls, and this was intended to replace dolls. Baby dolls would still be around, a few of them, but you would not see the number and variety of dolls, and dolls would not be pushed because girls should not be thinking about babies and reproduction. Girls should be out on the athletic field just as the boys are. Girls and boys really need not be all that different. Tea sets were to go the way of dolls, and all these things that traditionally were thought of as feminine would be greatly de-emphasized as girls got into more masculine pursuits. And just one of the things I recall was that the sports pages would be full of the scores of girls' teams just right there, right along with the boys' teams. So all of this to change the role model of what a young girl should look to be while she's growing up. She should look to be an athlete rather than to look forward to being a mother. The next topic is medicine. There would be profound changes in the practice of medicine. Overall, medicine would be much more tightly controlled. The observation was made, Congress is not going to go along with national health insurance that in 1969 he said is now abundantly evident, but it's not necessary. We have other ways to control health care. These will come about more gradually, but all health care delivery would come under tight control. Medical care would be closely connected to work. If you don't work or can't work, you won't have access to medical care. The days of hospitals giving away free care would gradually wind down until that was virtually non-existent. Costs would be forced up so that people won't be able to afford to go without insurance. People pay. You pay for it, you're entitled to it. Next heading to talk about is health and disease. He said there would be new diseases to appear, which had not ever been seen before, would be very difficult to diagnose and be untreatable, ultimately developed. I think AIDS was at least one example of what he was talking about. I now think that AIDS probably is a manufactured disease. Cancer. He said we can cure almost every cancer right now. Information is on file in the Rockefeller Institute if it's ever decided that it should be released. But consider, if people stop dying of cancer, how rapidly we would become overpopulated. You may as well die of cancer as something else. Efforts at cancer treatment would be geared more toward comfort than toward cure. Another area of discussion was religion. This is an avowed atheist speaking. And he said, religion is not necessarily bad. A lot of people seem to need religion with its mysteries and rituals, so they will have religion. But the major religions of today have to be changed because they are not compatible with the changes to come. The old religions will have to go, especially Christianity. Once the Roman Catholic Church is brought down, the rest of Christianity will follow easily. Then a new religion can be accepted for use all over the world. It will incorporate something from all of the old ones to make it more easy for people to accept it and feel at home in it. Most people won't be too concerned with religion. They will realize that they don't need it. In order to do this, the Bible will be changed. It will be rewritten to fit the new religion. Gradually, key words will be replaced with new words having various shades of meaning. Then the meaning attached to the new word can be close to the old word, and as time goes on, other shades of meaning of that word can be emphasized, and then gradually that word replaced with another word. Variability in meaning attached to any word can be used as a tool to change the entire meaning of Scripture and therefore make it acceptable to this new religion. He said, some of you probably think the churches won't stand for this. And he went on to say, the churches will help us. As regards education, he indicated that kids would spend more time in schools, but in many schools they wouldn't learn anything. They'll learn some things, but not as much as formerly. Better schools in better areas with better people, their kids will learn more. In the better schools, learning would be accelerated. And this was another time where he said, we think we can push evolution. By pushing kids to learn more, he seemed to be suggesting that their brains would evolve and that their offspring then would evolve, sort of pushing evolution in where kids would learn and be more intelligent at a younger age. Students would have to decide at a younger age what they would want to study and get onto their track early if they would qualify. It would be harder to change to another field of study once you got started. Studies would be concentrated in much greater depth, but narrowed. You wouldn't have access to material in other fields outside your own area of study without approval. Education would be lifelong. Adults would be going to school. There will always be new information that adults must have to keep up. When you can't keep up anymore, you're too old. This was another way of letting older people know that the time had come for them to move on and take the demise pill. If you got too tired to keep up with your education, you got too old to learn new information, then this was a signal you begin to prepare to get ready to step aside. Another area of discussion was laws that would be changed. At that time, a lot of states had blue laws about Sunday sales and certain Sunday activities. They said the blue laws would all be repealed. American industry came under discussion. It was the first that I'd heard of the term global interdependence, or that notion. The stated plan was that different parts of the world would be assigned different roles of industry and commerce in a unified global system. The continued preeminence of the United States and the relative independence and self-sufficiency of the United States would have to be changed. In order to create a new structure, you first have to tear down the old. And American industry was one example of that. Our system would have to be curtailed in order to give other countries a chance to build their industries, because otherwise they would not be able to compete against the United States. And this was especially true of our heavy industries that would be cut back while the same industries were being developed in other countries. Population shifts were to be brought about so that people would be tending to move into the Sun Belt. There would be sort of people without roots in their new locations, and traditions are easier to change in a place where there are a lot of transplanted people as compared to trying to change traditions in a place where people grew up and had an extended family where they had roots. Take control first of the port cities, New York, San Francisco, Seattle. The idea being that this is a piece of strategy, the idea being that if you control the port cities with your philosophy and your way of life, the heartland in between has to yield. But as you take away industry and jobs and relocate people, then this is a strategy to break down conservatism. When you take away industry and people are unemployed and poor, they will accept whatever change seems to offer them survival, and their morals and their commitment to things will all give way to survival. As regards music, he made a rather straightforward statement like, music will get worse. No new sugary romantic music would be publicized like that which had been written before that time. All the old music would be brought back on certain radio stations and records for older people to hear. And older folks would have sort of their own radio stations to hear. And the younger people, their music, as it got worse and worse, would be on their stations. And he seemed to indicate that one group would not hear the other group's music. Older folks would just refuse to hear the junk that was offered to young people, and the young people would accept the junk because it was identified them as their generation and helped them feel distinct from the older generation. He went on to say the music would carry a message to the young, and nobody would even know the message was there. They'd just think it was loud music. And then a statement that was kind of surprising: we think we can effectively limit crime to the slum areas so it won't be spread heavily into better areas. I remember wondering, how can you be so confident that the criminal element is going to stay where you want it to stay? But he went on to say there would be increased security would be needed in the better areas. That would mean more police, better coordinated police efforts. But anyhow, he went on to say there would be a whole new industry of residential security systems to develop, with alarms and locks and alarms going into the police department so that people could protect their wealth and their well-being, because some of the criminal activity would spill out of the slums into better, more affluent-looking areas that looked like they'd be worth burglarizing. Streets would be rerouted, renamed. Areas you had not seen in a while then would become unfamiliar. Among other things, this would contribute to older people feeling that it was time to move on. People would feel they couldn't even keep up now with the changes in areas that were once familiar. Vacant buildings would be left to stand empty and to deteriorate, and streets would be allowed to deteriorate in certain localities. The purpose of this was to provide the jungle a depressed atmosphere for the unfit.